The restaurant's back office smelled like grease and disappointment, a combination I'd grown intimately familiar with over the past 6 months. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the locker, trying to steady my breathing as my manager's voice echoed through the thin walls, berating someone about table turnover rates. My uniform clung to my skin, damp with sweat from the lunch rush, and my feet throbbed in the cheap shoes I'd bought at a discount store 3 weeks ago. The sole of the left one was already separating. This wasn't supposed to be my life. 2 years ago, I'd been Mrs. David Chen, living in a modest but comfortable apartment in the suburbs, working part-time at a bookstore I loved. Now I was Emma, just Emma, scraping together tips from businessmen who barely looked at me, living in a studio apartment where the heat only worked half the time, and jumping at every unexpected sound. The divorce had stripped me of everything except my dignity, and some days I wasn't sure I had much of that left either. I changed out of my uniform, pulling on the only decent dress I owned, a simple black sheath I'd found at a thrift store. Tonight was supposed to be special, or at least different. The restaurant's owner, Mr. Leonetti, was hosting some kind of private event in the main dining room after hours. He'd asked for volunteers to work it, and the pay was triple our usual rate. I couldn't afford to say no. When I emerged from the back, the restaurant had been transformed. The harsh fluorescent lights had been replaced with warm, amber lighting from candles scattered across pristine white tablecloths. The usual clatter of dishes and drone of conversations had been replaced by soft classical music and the low murmur of expensive voices. Men in tailored suits stood in clusters, speaking in hushed tones, while women in designer dresses glittered like jewelry themselves. I felt like an imposter in my thrift store dress. "Emma, table 7 needs water," my manager hissed, shoving a crystal pitcher into my hands. I moved through the room like a ghost, refilling glasses, removing plates, existing in the periphery of other people's important lives. Nobody looked at me directly. I was furniture, part of the ambiance, as invisible as the wallpaper, until I saw him. David stood near the bar, his hand resting possessively on the waist of a woman in a red dress that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. She was beautiful, tall, polished, everything I'd never been. He was laughing at something she'd said, that same laugh I'd once thought was charming before I learned it usually meant he was lying. My hands began to shake, the water pitcher trembled, ice cubes clinking against glass. He hadn't seen me yet, but he would. The dining room wasn't that large, and he had a predator's instinct for sensing vulnerability. I could already imagine his expression, that mixture of smug satisfaction and false concern that he'd perfected during our marriage. He'd ask how I was doing in that condescending tone, introduce me to his new girlfriend as his ex-wife, make sure everyone knew how far I'd fallen while he'd moved on to better things. I couldn't breathe. The pitcher slipped in my sweating palms. I needed to disappear, to vanish, to be anywhere but here. My eyes darted around the room desperately, looking for an exit, an alcove, anywhere to hide before his gaze swept across the room and locked onto mine. Panic surged through my chest like ice water. He smiled, that terrible knowing smile, and began moving in my direction, excusing himself from the woman in red. I had maybe 30 seconds before he reached me, before he could humiliate me in front of all these people, before he could remind me of everything I'd lost. I turned blindly, not caring where I was going, just needing to move. My hip collided with the edge of a chair. The water pitcher lurched dangerously. I stumbled, my cheap shoes catching on the thick carpet, and suddenly I was falling, until I wasn't. My body landed on something solid but yielding. My palms pressed against expensive fabric, wool so fine it felt like silk beneath my fingers. A scent enveloped me instantly. Bergamot and cedar, underlaid with something darker, more dangerous. Tobacco, maybe. Or gunpowder. I had fallen directly into someone's lap. "I'm so sorry," I gasped, trying to scramble up, but a hand settled on my waist, firm, possessive, keeping me in place. "Stay." The voice was low, barely above a whisper, but it carried absolute authority. Not a request, a command. I froze. Slowly, I turned my head to look at the man whose lap I was currently occupying. The first thing I noticed were his eyes. Dark, almost black in the candlelight, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. His face was all sharp angles and shadows. A strong jaw covered in precisely trimmed stubble, high cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe late 30s, but there was something ancient in his gaze, something that had seen too much. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car had, before the repo men took it. A diamond cufflink caught the light as he adjusted his hold on me, his hand spanning my waist like he owned it. Behind him stood two men in black suits, their faces impassive, but their bodies coiled with tension, hands hidden beneath their jackets in a way that made my stomach drop. This wasn't just any guest. I need to get up, I stammered, acutely aware that every eye in the restaurant had turned toward us. I'm so sorry. I tripped. I didn't mean, who are you running from? His accent was slight but present. Italian, maybe, softened by years in America. No one. I'm not. Don't lie. His thumb traced a small circle on my waist, the gesture almost absent-minded but somehow intimate. You looked terrified. Who is he? Before I could answer, David's voice cut through the silence. Emma, what the hell are you doing? The man's eyes never left mine, but his expression shifted. Something predatory sliding behind his gaze like a shark moving beneath still water. Is that him? I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. David was standing 5 feet away now, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. The woman in red had followed him, her expression a mixture of confusion and distaste. Emma, get up. You're making a scene. David's voice carried that edge I remembered too well, the one that used to make me flinch, make me apologize, make me small. The man's hand tightened fractionally on my waist. She's exactly where she needs to be. His voice remained quiet, but something in it made David take an involuntary step backward. And you are? I'm her husband, ex-husband. This is inappropriate. Emma, I said, get up. She didn't hear you. The man shifted slightly, and I realized he was positioning himself between me and David, even while I was still in his lap. Perhaps because she doesn't take orders from you anymore. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. David's date touched his arm nervously. David, maybe we should... Who the fuck do you think you are? David's bravado was crumbling, but he couldn't seem to stop himself. You can't just... She works here. She's staff. This is completely... I know exactly who I am. The man's voice remained conversational, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more terrifying. The question is, do you know who I am? One of the bodyguards shifted forward slightly, and I saw David's eyes widen. Whatever he saw in that subtle movement made the color drain from his face. Around us, the other guests had gone silent, some looking away deliberately, others watching with a horrified fascination of people witnessing a car crash. David opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. You were just leaving. It wasn't a suggestion. David grabbed his date's hand and practically dragged her toward the exit. She stumbled in her heels, shooting confused glances over her shoulder as he pulled her away. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. Only then did the man look away from the door, his attention returning to me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Up close, I could see a thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow, and another along his jawline, marks of violence barely concealed by expensive grooming. Now, he said softly, his hand still spanning my waist like we did this every day. Tell me your name. Emma. My voice came out barely above a whisper. Emma Morrison. Emma. He repeated it like he was tasting it, deciding if he liked the flavor. His eyes drifted to where my uniform was visible beneath my coat on a nearby chair, then back to my face. You work here. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. Not anymore. He reached into his jacket. His bodyguards remained still, which told me more about who he was than anything else could have, and pulled out a phone. He typed something one-handed, still holding me in place with the other. Marco, he said to someone on the other end, not bothering with greetings. I need a position filled. Personal assistant. Immediate start. He paused. No, not that kind of position. Actual work. Another pause. Because I said so, he ended the call and returned his attention to me. I was trembling now, though I couldn't tell if it was from fear or something else entirely. I don't understand, I whispered. You needed protection. I provided it. He said it like it was simple, like he hadn't just upended my entire world in the span of 5 minutes. Now you need a job that doesn't require you to be invisible. I'm providing that too. I don't even know who you are. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. My name is Alessandro Marchesi. He watched me carefully, waiting for recognition. It came slowly, like ice water trickling down my spine. Alessandro Marchesi. I'd seen that name in newspapers, always carefully worded, always surrounded by allegations that never quite stuck. Organized crime, racketeering. One article had called him the ghost of the underworld, too smart to catch, too powerful to touch. I was sitting in a Mafia boss's lap. I need to go, I breathed, trying again to stand. This time, he let me, but his hand slid from my waist to my wrist. A gentle manacle. You're afraid of the wrong person, Emma Morrison. His thumb found my pulse point, pressing lightly against the frantic rhythm there. Him, you should fear. Me? His eyes held mine, dark and fathomless. I don't hurt what's mine. I'm not yours. Not yet. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. But you sat in my lap. You sought my protection. In my world, that means something. He released my wrist but pressed something into my palm. A business card, heavy stock, with nothing but a phone number embossed in silver. When you're ready to stop running, call me. He stood in a fluid motion, and I realized he was taller than I'd thought. At least 6'2", all lean muscle beneath that perfect suit. His bodyguards moved with him like shadows, flanking him as he walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back. Emma. Just my name, but it sent a shiver through me. Don't make me wait too long. Then he was gone, and I was standing alone in a restaurant full of strangers, holding a card that felt like a bomb in my hand. My heart racing so fast, I thought it might break through my ribs. My manager appeared at my elbow, his face pale. Emma, Mr. Leonetti wants to see you in his office. Now, I followed him on numb legs, expecting to be fired. Instead, Mr. Leonetti was practically vibrating with excitement behind his desk. Do you know who that was? He demanded. Alessandro Marchesi just sat in my restaurant. He never goes anywhere publicly. Emma, what did you say to him? I fell into his lap. Mr. Leonetti laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Well, whatever you did, he just bought this entire restaurant, paid triple its value, cash, on the condition that you're released from your employment immediately with 6 months severance. He shook his head in disbelief. He also sent a car for you. It's waiting outside. My knees felt weak. A car. With a driver. Emma, I don't know what just happened, but he pushed an envelope across the desk. This is yours. 6 months' pay. And Emma? Be careful. Men like that don't do favors without expecting something in return. I took the envelope with shaking hands and walked out of the restaurant in a daze. Sure enough, a black Mercedes with tinted windows idled at the curb. A driver in a crisp uniform opened the back door as I approached. Miss Morrison, Mr. Marchesi instructed me to take you home safely. I should have refused. Should have walked away, taken the bus, maintained whatever shreds of normal life I had left. But David's face kept flashing through my mind. His shock, his fear, the way he'd retreated when Alessandro had claimed me with nothing but a hand on my waist and ice in his voice. For the first time in 2 years, someone had made me feel protected instead of prey. I slid into the Mercedes. The leather was butter soft, the interior immaculate. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked down at the card still clutched in my hand, the silver numbers gleaming in the streetlight. When you're ready to stop running, call me. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But as the car glided through the city streets toward my shabby apartment, I didn't throw the card away either. I held it like a talisman, like a promise, like a threat. And somewhere in the darkness, I knew Alessandro Marchesi was waiting to see what I would do next. The car stopped outside my building, a 4-story walk-up with peeling paint and a door that didn't lock properly. The driver opened my door, his expression carefully neutral as he took in the neighborhood. Mr. Marchesi asked me to ensure you arrive safely inside, Miss Morrison. That's not necessary. With respect, ma'am, Mr. Marchesi doesn't make suggestions. He walked me to my door, waited while I unlocked it, and only left after I was safely inside with the deadbolt thrown. Through my grimy window, I watched the Mercedes glide away like a shark returning to deeper waters. I was alone in my tiny apartment, but I didn't feel alone. I felt watched, protected, claimed. And the most terrifying part? Some dark, desperate part of me wanted to be. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Alessandro's face, those dark, calculating eyes that had looked at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. The weight of his hand on my waist, the way his voice had dropped when he'd said, "I don't hurt what's mine," the casual, terrifying authority with which he'd made David disappear. By 3 a.m., I'd convinced myself it had been a fever dream. By 4, I was Googling his name on my cracked phone screen, watching the blue light illuminate my face as article after article loaded. Most were speculation, carefully worded to avoid libel suits. Alleged connections to organized crime. Suspected involvement in, sources claim. But between the lines, the truth was clear. Alessandro Marchesi wasn't just dangerous. He was untouchable. The kind of man who moved through the world leaving no fingerprints, no evidence, nothing but whispers and fear in his wake. And I'd sat in his lap. The business card lay on my nightstand, innocent as a snake. I'd picked it up a dozen times, my thumb hovering over my phone's keypad, before setting it down again. What would I even say? Thank you for terrifying my ex-husband and buying an entire restaurant just to give me severance pay. Dawn crept through my window, gray and cold. I dragged myself to the shower, letting lukewarm water, the building's boiler was temperamental, cascade over my aching muscles. In the mirror, I looked haunted. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. My cheekbones seemed sharper than they had a month ago, carved by stress and skipped meals. The envelope from Mr. Leonetti sat on my kitchen counter. 6 months' salary and a single check. It was more money than I'd seen since the divorce. Enough to catch up on rent, buy groceries that weren't ramen, maybe even get my shoes resoled. But it felt like blood money, like I'd sold something I couldn't name for temporary security. My phone rang at 8 a.m., an unknown number. My heart stuttered. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately regretted it, then felt ridiculous for regretting it. It rang again at 8:30, again at 9. At 9:15, there was a knock at my door. I froze, coffee cup halfway to my lips. Nobody knocked on my door. The few friends I'd had before the divorce had drifted away, embarrassed by my circumstances or tired of my problems. My landlord just taped notices to the door when he wanted something. The knock came again, patient and persistent. I crept to the door and peered through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, mid-30s, striking rather than beautiful, with sharp cheekbones and dark hair pulled into a severe bun. She wore a charcoal pantsuit that screamed money and carried a leather portfolio under one arm. "Miss Morrison," she called through the door, her voice crisp and professional. "My name is Sofia Greco. I work for Mr. Marchesi. He asked me to speak with you about the position he mentioned last night." Of course he had. Because Alessandro Marchesi didn't make idle offers, didn't say things he didn't mean. When he'd said he was giving me a job, he'd meant it. I opened the door a crack. The chain's still engaged. I didn't call the number. I'm aware. Sophia's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested amusement. "Mr. Marchesi anticipated you might need encouragement. May I come in?" Every instinct screamed at me to say no. But Sophia's gaze had already swept past me, taking in my apartment in one assessing glance. The threadbare furniture, the water stain on the ceiling, the pile of bills on the counter I'd been trying to ignore. I slid the chain free and opened the door. Sophia entered like she owned the place, her heels clicking on the worn linoleum. She didn't comment on my living conditions, didn't wrinkle her nose or offer false sympathy. She simply opened her portfolio and extracted a sheaf of papers. "The position is personal assistant to Mr. Marchesi. Your responsibilities would include managing his schedule, screening his calls, accompanying him to meetings, and handling various administrative tasks." She slid a paper across my counter. "The salary is $90,000 annually plus benefits, health insurance, dental, vision, company car, discretionary allowance for appropriate professional attire." I stared at the number. 90,000. I'd made 30,000 at the bookstore, and that had felt like luxury compared to the restaurant. "This is insane," I whispered. This is business. Sophia's voice remained neutral. Mr. Marchese requires an assistant he can trust, someone who understands discretion, someone who... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Someone who has already demonstrated loyalty by accepting his protection. I didn't accept anything. I fell into his lap by accident. And you stayed when he told you to stay. Sophia's eyes held mine. You allowed him to claim you in front of a room full of witnesses. In Mr. Marchese's world, that means something, Miss Morrison. It means you trusted him to protect you, even when you didn't know who he was. I was terrified. Of your ex-husband, not of Mr. Marchese. Sophia tilted her head slightly. Why is that, do you think? I didn't have an answer, or rather I did, and it terrified me more than anything else. Because in that moment, with David bearing down on me and Alessandro's hand firm on my waist, I'd felt safer than I had in years. Protected. Claimed. Mine. I don't know anything about being a personal assistant to someone like him, I said finally. You'll learn. Sophia produced another paper, an NDA so thick it could have been a novella. Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you learn while in Mr. Marchese's employment remains confidential. Forever. Violation of this agreement carries severe consequences. The unspoken threat hung in the air like smoke. I thought about those articles, those carefully worded allegations. People who crossed Alessandro Marchese didn't just lose their jobs. And if I say no? Sophia's expression softened fractionally. Then you say no. Mr. Marchese doesn't force anyone into his service, Miss Morrison. He makes offers. You accept them or you don't. She paused. But I should tell you, your ex-husband filed a complaint with the restaurant last night. Claimed you assaulted him. Mr. Leonetti dismissed it, of course, given that he witnessed the entire incident. But Mr. Chen seems persistent. He called your building's landlord this morning. Expressed concerns about your mental stability, your ability to pay rent. Ice flooded my veins. He's trying to get me evicted. He's trying to hurt you in any way he can. Because last night someone made him look weak in public. He can't retaliate against Mr. Marchese. He's not that stupid, so he'll come after you instead. Sophia's voice remained matter of fact, but her eyes held something like sympathy. Men like your ex-husband don't let go easily, Miss Morrison. They need to win, even if there's nothing left to win but ashes. My hands were shaking again. I pressed them flat against the counter, trying to steady myself. David wasn't supposed to be able to hurt me anymore. We were divorced, separate. I'd given him everything in the settlement just to make him go away. The apartment, the car, even the bookstore discount I'd loved. But Sophia was right. He wasn't done. He'd never be done. Not until he'd ground me into dust, just to prove he could. Mr. Marchese anticipated this as well. Sophia continued, producing yet another document. He's prepared to secure new accommodation for you. A furnished apartment in a building with actual security. The lease would be in your name, rent paid in advance for the first year as a signing bonus. Your ex-husband would have no access, no knowledge of your location. I laughed, a broken sound. Why? Why would he do all this for someone he met for 5 minutes? Sophia's expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering across her features. You'll have to ask him that yourself. But if you want my opinion, she leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping. Mr. Marchese doesn't do anything without reason, Miss Morrison. And he doesn't protect people he doesn't intend to keep. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they sent heat curling through my chest, dangerous and intoxicating. When would I start? The words escaped before I could stop them. Sophia smiled, a real smile that transformed her severe face. Today, your apartment is ready now. I have a car waiting downstairs to take you there, help you pack your essentials. The moving company will handle the rest tomorrow. She pushed the contract toward me. All I need is your signature. I stared at the papers. This was insane. Reckless. I was signing my life over to a man I didn't know. A man who lived in shadows and violence. A man who'd looked at me like I was something precious and dangerous all at once. But what was the alternative? Stay here? Wait for David to systematically destroy what little I'd rebuilt? Keep running? Keep hiding? keep making myself smaller and smaller until I disappeared entirely, I picked up the pen Sophia offered. "He'll want to see you this afternoon," Sophia said, as I signed my name in 3 different places. "To discuss your responsibilities. I'll take you to your new apartment first, give you time to settle in and change. Mr. Marchese appreciates punctuality." "Where does he want to meet?" "His office. Downtown." Sophia gathered the papers, tucking them back into her portfolio with swift efficiency. "Miss Morrison? A word of advice. Mr. Marchese values honesty above everything else. If you have questions, ask them. If you have concerns, voice them. But never, ever lie to him. He can always tell. And he doesn't forgive it." The warning sent a chill down my spine. Noted. 20 minutes later, I was in the back of another black Mercedes. A different one from last night, but equally immaculate. Sophia sat beside me, typing something on her phone with efficient precision. We drove through the city, leaving my neighborhood's decay behind for tree-lined streets and buildings that gleamed like monuments to wealth. The apartment was in a high-rise with a doorman and actual marble in the lobby. Sophia led me to the 15th floor, to a door that opened onto a space easily 3 times the size of my studio. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The furniture was modern and minimalist. All clean lines and neutral colors. The kitchen had appliances I didn't recognize. "This is too much," I breathed. "This is appropriate for someone in your position." Sophia walked to the bedroom, gesturing for me to follow. The closet was already partially stocked. Professional clothes in my size, shoes that looked expensive and comfortable. For meetings and public appearances with Mr. Marchese, we'll arrange a full wardrobe consultation later this week. I touched a silk blouse, wondering what my life had become in less than 24 hours. "You have 2 hours, Sophia said, checking her watch. "Shower, change, try to eat something. The car will return at 1 o'clock to take you to Mr. Marchese's office. Don't be late." Then she was gone, and I was alone in an apartment that smelled like money and fresh paint, staring at a life I didn't recognize as mine. I showered in a bathroom with water pressure that actually worked, changed into one of the outfits from the closet, a navy dress that fit perfectly, shoes that didn't hurt my feet. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who could belong in Alessandro's world, someone who looked like she had value. It was terrifying how good it felt. At 1 o'clock exactly, the car arrived. This time, Sophia wasn't in it, just a driver who said nothing as we navigated downtown traffic. We pulled up to a building that looked like it housed law firms and investment banks, all glass and steel and power. The driver escorted me inside, past security guards who nodded respectfully, into an elevator that required a key card for the top floor. The doors opened onto a space that was more penthouse than office, more floor-to-ceiling windows, more expensive furniture. And standing with his back to me, looking out over the city like he owned it, was Alessandro Marchese. He turned as I entered, and the full force of his attention hit me like a physical thing. "Emma." He said my name like a caress, like a claim. "You came." Did I have a choice? The words escaped before I could stop them. His lips curved into something too sharp to be a smile. "You always have a choice. You just chose me." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit. We need to talk about what happens next." I sat because my legs weren't entirely steady, and because something in Alessandro's tone made refusal feel impossible. He moved around his desk with predatory grace, not sitting in his own chair, but perching on the edge of the desk itself, closer to me, invading my space in a way that should have felt threatening, but instead felt deliberate, calculated. "You signed the contract," he said. It wasn't a question. Sophia was very persuasive. Sophia is efficient, but she didn't persuade you. His eyes tracked over my face, reading something I didn't know I was showing. "You signed because your ex-husband is already making moves, because you're tired of running, because somewhere in that brilliant, frightened mind of yours, you recognize that I can give you something you haven't had in a very long time. And what's that? Safety." The word hung between us, heavy with implication. Real safety, not the illusion of it. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Nothing about you feels safe." "Good." He leaned forward slightly, and I caught that scent again, bergamot and cedar, danger, and dark promises. Safe men are predictable, Emma. Weak. They let people like your ex-husband hurt the women they're supposed to protect. I'm not a safe man. But I am a man who keeps what's mine protected. Always. I'm not yours. You keep saying that. His voice dropped lower, intimate. Why do you think I keep disagreeing? Heat flooded my cheeks. I looked away, focusing on the city sprawling below us. From this height, everything looked small, manageable. You don't know anything about me. I know you're stronger than you think you are. I know you left a marriage that was destroying you, even though it cost you everything. I know you worked a job where people treated you like furniture, where you made yourself invisible just to survive. He paused, and when I looked back, his expression had shifted. Something almost gentle beneath the dangerous exterior. I know you're exhausted, Emma, tired of fighting alone, tired of being afraid. My throat tightened. Reading my file doesn't mean you know me. I don't need a file to see who you are. He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered against my jaw. I saw it last night. The way you looked at your ex-husband, not with fear, but with fury. The way you didn't flinch when you realized who I was. Most people flinch, Emma. They can't help it. But you just looked at me like you were trying to solve a puzzle. Maybe I was. My voice came out breathier than I'd intended. You don't make sense. Mafia bosses don't rescue waitresses. They don't offer them jobs and apartments and protection. What do you want from me? Honestly? He smiled, and it was devastating. I'm still figuring that out myself. But I know I want you here, in my world, where I can see you, keep you safe, keep you... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. Let's start with employment and see where it goes. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He stood, moving back around his desk, putting professional distance between us. When he spoke again, his voice was more businesslike, though his eyes remained intense. Your responsibilities will be straightforward to start. You'll manage my personal calendar, screen calls, handle correspondence. You'll accompany me to certain meetings, not business meetings, but social obligations. Dinners, events, places where I need someone. Someone what? Someone who makes me look human. He said it without inflection, like it was simple fact. People are afraid of me, Emma. They should be. But fear only gets you so far in certain circles. Sometimes you need to appear civilized, approachable. Having a beautiful woman at my side accomplishes that. The word beautiful sent a shock through my system. I wasn't beautiful. Not like the women I'd seen at the restaurant. Not like David's new girlfriend. I was plain, ordinary, forgettable. Alessandro's eyes narrowed. Don't do that. Do what? Dismiss yourself. I can see it in your face. You're thinking you're not beautiful enough, not good enough. Your ex-husband trained you to think that way, didn't he? Made you feel small so he could feel big. He came back around the desk, crouching before my chair so we were eye level. Let me be very clear, Emma Morrison. You are beautiful. And more importantly, you're mine now. Which means anyone who tries to make you feel otherwise will answer to me. Including the voice in your own head. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. His face was inches from mine, his hands resting on the arms of my chair, caging me in. Do you understand? His voice was soft, almost gentle but absolutely unyielding. Yes. It came out as a whisper. Good. He stood, and the loss of his proximity felt like cold water. Sophia will brief you on the specifics tomorrow. For today, I want you to settle into your apartment, rest, let yourself adjust. Tomorrow we begin properly. He checked his watch. Expensive, understated. I have a meeting in an hour. Marco will drive you home. Alessandro. His name felt strange on my tongue. Too intimate. He turned back, one eyebrow raised. Why did you really do this? Buy the restaurant, give me a job, all of it, the truth. He studied me for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. Because when you fell into my lap last night, you looked at me with these wide, terrified eyes. Not of me, but of him. And something in me. He trailed off, shaking his head. Let's just say I don't like seeing prey where I see potential. You interested me, Emma. You still do. That's rare. It wasn't the whole truth. I could sense that. But it was truth enough for now. Marco, one of the bodyguards from last night, drove me back to the apartment in silence. He walked me to the door again, checked the apartment thoroughly before leaving, and handed me a phone I hadn't had that morning. Mr. Marchese's direct line is programmed, he said. Any problems? Any concerns? You call. Day or night. Then I was alone again, in an apartment that still didn't feel real, holding a phone that connected me directly to a man who terrified and fascinated me in equal measure. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, unpacking the few belongings I'd brought, exploring the apartment's amenities. The refrigerator had been stocked, the bathroom had luxury products. There was even a laptop on the desk, with a note in Sophia's precise handwriting, for work. Password is your birthday. How did they know my birthday? The question should have disturbed me more than it did. That night, I lay in a bed with sheets that probably cost more than my old couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the seismic shift my life had undergone. 24 hours ago, I'd been invisible. Now I was... What? A possession? An employee? Something more complicated than either? My new phone buzzed. Unknown number. But when I opened the message, I knew immediately who it was from. Are you settling in? My fingers hovered over the keys. This was dangerous. Texting with him. Engaging beyond the professional boundaries we should maintain. But I typed anyway. It's a beautiful apartment. Thank you. The response came immediately. You deserve beautiful things, Emma. Sleep well. Tomorrow your real education begins. I should have asked what he meant. Should have established boundaries. Instead, I typed, Good night, Alessandro. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, Good night, il mio tesoro. I didn't know what it meant, but I fell asleep with the phone clutched in my hand, feeling less alone than I had in 2 years. The next morning, Sophia arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, carrying coffee and a garment bag. Good morning, Miss Morrison. Today we begin properly. She laid the garment bag across the couch. Mr. Marchese has a charity gala tonight. You'll be accompanying him. This is what you'll wear. I unzipped the bag, and my breath caught. The dress was midnight blue, elegant, and understated, but clearly expensive. Matching shoes, jewelry, even undergarments in my size. A gala? I've never been to anything like that. Then it's fortunate you'll have Mr. Marchese to guide you. Sophia's expression softened slightly. Emma, may I speak candidly? I nodded, grateful for anything that felt like honest conversation. I've worked for Mr. Marchese for 6 years. I've seen him with many women, business associates, brief affairs, people trying to leverage their looks for access to his world. He's never looked at any of them the way he looked at you yesterday. She paused, choosing her words carefully. He's possessive by nature, protective to a fault with the few people he cares about. If you're going to be in his life, even in a professional capacity, you need to understand what that means. And what does it mean? It means he won't tolerate anyone hurting you. It means he'll guard you like you're something precious. But it also means, she hesitated, it means he'll expect loyalty. Absolute loyalty. Not just professionally, but personally. Alessandro Marchese doesn't do anything halfway, Emma. When he commits to protecting someone, to claiming someone, he does it completely. I'm not ready for that, I whispered. I don't think he's giving you a choice. Sophia's smile was sympathetic. But for what it's worth, I've never seen him this invested in someone's well-being. Whatever his reasons, his protection is real. And in our world, that's worth more than gold. She spent the next 3 hours briefing me, not just on calendar management and correspondence, but on Alessandro's world. The legitimate businesses that fronted for less legitimate operations. The families he allied with and those he opposed. The delicate balance of power that kept the city's underworld from devolving into war. You won't be involved in business, Sophia assured me, but you need to understand the landscape. Who to be polite to, who to avoid, who reports back to Alessandro about everything they see. My head spun with names and relationships and unspoken rules. At 6 p.m., Sophia returned to help me prepare for the gala. She did my makeup, subtle but polished. and arranged my hair in an elegant updo. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back looked sophisticated, confident, like she belonged in Alessandro's world. "He's on his way up," Sophia said, checking her phone. "Remember, stay close to him, follow his lead, and don't let anyone intimidate you. You're under his protection. That makes you untouchable." A knock at the door made my heart race. Sophia smiled, squeezed my hand once, and left through the kitchen exit, leaving me to answer alone. Alessandro stood in my doorway wearing a tuxedo that should have been illegal. His hair was slicked back, emphasizing those sharp cheekbones and dangerous eyes. He looked at me. Really looked. His gaze traveling from my face down the dress and back up, and something heated flickered in his expression. "Bellissima," he murmured. "Perfect." "You clean up pretty well yourself," I managed, trying to keep my voice light. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, and suddenly the apartment felt smaller. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a velvet box, opening it to reveal a necklace. Diamonds and sapphires that probably cost more than my old car. "Turn around," he commanded softly. I obeyed, pulse racing as his fingers brushed my neck, fastening the necklace. His breath was warm against my skin. "This stays with you," he said quietly. "Not alone. A gift. Because you're accompanying me tonight as more than just an employee, Emma. You're there as mine. And I take care of what's mine." I turned back to face him, acutely aware of how close we were standing. "What exactly am I to you, Alessandro?" His hand came up, cupping my jaw with surprising gentleness. "Still figuring that out, remember?" His thumb traced my lower lip, sending electricity through my nervous system. "But I know one thing. I'm not letting you go." The gala was held at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, a palace of marble and crystal that made me feel like I'd stepped into a different world entirely. Alessandro's hand rested possessively at the small of my back as we entered, and I felt every eye in the room turn toward us. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. "Ignore them," Alessandro murmured, leaning close enough that his lips brushed my ear. "They're just trying to figure out who you are and why I brought you." "And who am I?" I whispered back. His hand tightened fractionally on my waist. "Mine. That's all they need to know." We moved through the crowd like royalty, Alessandro greeting people with polite nods and firm handshakes. Some looked at him with fear barely concealed behind polished smiles, others with respect that bordered on reverence. All of them looked at me with curiosity, some suspicious, some envious, all of them calculating what my presence meant. Alessandro Marchesi, a man in his 60s, approached, silver-haired and distinguished, with a woman half his age on his arm. "I didn't expect to see you at this sort of event." "Senator?" Alessandro's voice was cordial but cool. "I occasionally remember I'm supposed to appear civilized." The senator laughed, but his eyes were sharp. "And who is this lovely creature?" "Emma Morrison, my personal assistant." Alessandro's hand never left my back. "Emma, this is Senator Richard Hartford. He chairs the Appropriations Committee." I extended my hand, remembering Sophia's briefing. Hartford had mob connections he thought were secret. Alessandro knew everything about them. "Pleased to meet you, Senator. The pleasure is mine." Hartford held my hand a moment too long, his gaze assessing. "Personal assistant. How modern." "How necessary," Alessandro corrected, his voice dropping just enough to carry warning. "I find Emma's presence invaluable." The senator released my hand, that false smile never wavering. "Of course. Enjoy your evening." As he walked away, I felt Alessandro's tension slowly ease. "You did well," he said quietly. "Hartford likes to test people, see if he can make them uncomfortable. You didn't flinch." "Should I have?" "No." He guided me toward the bar. "You should be exactly what you were, poised, professional, and completely aware that you're under my protection. Every person in this room just learned that touching you means dealing with me." The bartender appeared immediately, and Alessandro ordered for both of us, whiskey for himself, champagne for me. I took a grateful sip, trying to calm my racing heart. How long do we have to stay? I asked. Feeling overwhelmed? Feeling like I'm on display. His lips curved into something that might have been amusement. You are. Get used to it. But we'll leave after dinner. I've made the necessary appearances. He paused, his expression shifting to something more serious. There's someone here I need you to meet. Someone important. Before I could ask who, a woman glided toward us, stunning in a red gown that clung to her curves, dark hair cascading over bare shoulders. She was probably in her early 40s, beautiful in that timeless way that spoke of wealth and excellent genes. Alessandro. Her voice was silk and smoke, still breaking hearts, I see. Isabella. Alessandro's posture changed, not defensive, but more alert. I didn't know you'd be here. Francesco sends his regards. He's in Milan, handling some business. Her eyes shifted to me, sharp and assessing. And who is this? Another one of your short-term acquisitions? I felt Alessandro tense beside me, but before he could respond, I extended my hand. Emma Morrison. I work for Alessandro. Isabella's eyebrow arched. Work for him. How delightfully euphemistic. She didn't take my hand. Tell me, Emma Morrison, do you know what kind of man you're working for? What he's capable of? I know he's the kind of man who protects what's his, I said quietly, surprised by my own boldness. That's more than most men can claim. Something flickered in Isabella's expression. Surprise, maybe? Or respect? She looked at Alessandro. Interesting choice. She has spine. Then, lower, meant only for him. Francesco wants to meet with you, next week. He says it's urgent. Tell Francesco if it's urgent, he can call me himself. You know he won't. Not on phone lines. Isabella's smile was tight. Be careful, Alessandro. There are rumors. People are saying you've gone soft. That you're distracted. People say a lot of things. Most of them are wrong. And when they're right? She glanced at me again. When they're right, people get hurt. She walked away, leaving tension crackling in her wake. I turned to Alessandro, questions burning on my tongue, but his expression had gone cold, calculating. The man I'd seen that first night, all dangerous edges and shadow. Who was that? I asked. Isabella Rossi. She's married to Francesco Rossi, head of the Rossi family. We have an arrangement. Territories, operations, ways we avoid stepping on each other's toes. His jaw tightened. She's right about one thing. People are watching me, waiting to see if I've lost my edge. Have you? He looked at me then, really looked, and something in his expression made my breath catch. I don't know yet. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. Come on. Let's get through this dinner, and then I'm taking you home. Dinner was an exercise in endurance. Alessandro sat me to his right. A position of honor, Sophia had explained, reserved for people of significance. Throughout the meal, I felt eyes on us constantly. Alessandro played the perfect host, charming and courteous, but his hand found mine under the table repeatedly, squeezing gently, reminding me I wasn't alone. It wasn't until dessert that everything fell apart. A commotion near the entrance made people turn. Raised voices, security guards converging, and then, pushing through them with drunken determination, was David. My blood turned to ice. Emma? His voice carried across the ballroom, slurred and angry. Emma, I know you're here. You can't hide from me. Alessandro was on his feet instantly, his hand gripping my arm. Stay here, he commanded, his voice deadly calm. Alessandro, stay here. He signaled to Marco, who materialized from the shadows. Don't let her move. Then he was walking toward David with that predatory grace, every eye in the room tracking his movement. I watched in horror as David spotted him, his face twisting with rage. You! David jabbed a finger at Alessandro. You think you can steal my wife? Buy her like a whore? The room went utterly silent. Alessandro stopped 3 feet from David, hands loose at his sides, expression carved from ice. She was never yours to lose. And if you ever speak about her that way again, they'll be identifying you by your dental records. David laughed. A ugly, broken sound. You don't scare me. I know who you are. I know what you do. You think you're untouchable, but I'll expose you. I'll tell everyone. Tell them what? Alessandro's voice remained conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. That you're a pathetic drunk who lost everything and now stalks his ex-wife? That you're so desperate for control you'd crash a charity gala? He took a step closer. You want to threaten me? Go ahead, but understand something. Every person in this room knows exactly who I am. They know what I'm capable of, and they just watched you publicly insult someone under my protection. Security guards flanked David now, but he was beyond caring. She's coming home with me. Emma! Emma, get over here! I felt Marco tense beside me as I stood, but I shook my head. Let me handle this. Miss Morrison, please. He hesitated, then stepped aside. I walked across that silent ballroom with my head high, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes tracking my movement. When I reached Alessandro's side, I looked at David, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for the first time in years. He was small, not physically. He'd always been tall, broad-shouldered, but his soul was small, shriveled by bitterness and need. He'd spent our marriage making me feel insignificant so he could feel important, and I'd let him. I'm not your wife anymore, David, I said quietly. I'm not your anything. You need to leave. You bitch, he snarled, lunging forward. He never reached me. Alessandro moved with cobra strike speed, catching David's wrist and twisting. I heard something pop. David screamed, dropping to his knees. Touch her, Alessandro said softly, and I'll break every bone in your body. Slowly. Do you understand? David whimpered, nodding frantically. Alessandro released him with a look of disgust, and security guards immediately hauled David away, his protests fading as they dragged him toward the exit. Alessandro turned to me, his expression shifting from lethal to concerned in an instant. Are you hurt? I shook my head, but I was trembling. The adrenaline, the fear, the sheer surreality of what had just happened, it all crashed over me at once. Get me out of here, I whispered. Please. He didn't hesitate. His arm wrapped around my waist and he guided me toward a side exit, Marco and another guard clearing the path. Behind us, I heard the chatter resume. Hundreds of conversations speculating about what they'd just witnessed. The car was waiting. Alessandro bundled me inside, sliding in beside me, and the door closed on the world. As we pulled away from the hotel, I started shaking harder. Emma. Alessandro's hands framed my face, forcing me to look at him. Breathe, you're safe. He can't hurt you. He tried to, in front of everyone. The words wouldn't come properly, and everyone saw what happens when someone threatens what's mine. His thumb stroked my cheekbones. He's done, Emma. I'll make sure of it. He'll never come near you again. How? I managed. How can you promise that? His expression went dark. Because by tomorrow morning, David Chen will understand exactly what it means to cross me. He'll be so terrified of his own shadow that the thought of approaching you will make him physically ill. He pulled me against his chest, one hand cradling the back of my head. I told you I protect what's mine. Did you think I was speaking metaphorically? I pressed my face against his shoulder, breathing in that scent of bergamot and danger. I should have been horrified, should have been questioning what kind of man could make promises like that and mean them. Instead, I felt safer than I'd ever felt in my life. I'm sorry, I whispered. I ruined your evening. You didn't ruin anything. He did, and he'll pay for it. Alessandro's hand stroked my hair slowly, soothingly. But right now, all that matters is you. Are you okay? Was I? My ex-husband had just publicly humiliated himself trying to reach me, and the man holding me had casually broken his wrist without blinking. I was wearing a dress worth thousands of dollars and a necklace worth more than my old car. I'd signed away my life to a Mafia boss who looked at me like I was something precious and spoke about violence like other people discuss the weather. I should have been terrified. I'm okay, I said finally, pulling back to look at him. I'm actually okay. His eyes searched mine, dark and intense. You're stronger than you think, Emma Morrison. Or more broken than I realized. Not broken, never broken. His hand cupped my jaw. Bent, maybe. Tested. But still standing. That's not weakness. That's steel. The car pulled up to my building. Alessandro walked me to my door, waited while I unlocked it, then followed me inside without asking permission. Marco took up position in the hallway, a silent guardian. You don't have to stay, I said, but the words lacked conviction. Yes, I do. Alessandro shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket, draping it over a chair, then began rolling up his shirt sleeves. The gesture should have been casual, but on him it looked deliberate, intimate. You're shaken. I'm not leaving you alone. Alessandro. Emma. He stepped closer, and suddenly we were inches apart, his heat radiating against my skin. Stop fighting this. Stop pretending you don't want me here. I can see it in your eyes. You feel safer when I'm close. Admit it. My breath caught. That's not... Admit it. His voice dropped to that low, commanding register that made my knees weak. Fine. The word burst out. Fine. I feel safer with you. Happy? Getting there. His smile was slow, dangerous. Now go change. Get comfortable. I'll make coffee. You know how to make coffee? I'm Italian. Of course I know how to make coffee. I retreated to the bedroom, my heart racing. When I emerged in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, Alessandro was standing in the kitchen, looking absurdly domestic as he operated the fancy espresso machine. He'd removed his tie and unbuttoned his collar, and the sight of him in my space, rumpled and relaxed, did dangerous things to my equilibrium. He handed me a cup, and we sat on the couch in silence, drinking coffee at midnight like this was normal. What happens now? I finally asked. With David? Now? Now he learns his lesson. Alessandro's expression remained neutral. He'll receive a visit tomorrow. Nothing violent. I'm not interested in making him a martyr. But he'll understand that pursuing you further would be catastrophic for his health, his career, and every aspect of his life he still values. That's terrifying? Controlling? Exactly what you need? He set down his cup. I know what I am, Emma. I know how I operate. And I know you should probably run from me as fast as possible, but you won't. Why won't I? He reached over, taking my cup and setting it aside, then pulled me toward him until I was curled against his side. Because you're tired of running, because I make you feel protected, and because whether you want to admit it or not, you're mine now. You have been since the moment you landed in my lap. I should have protested, should have maintained boundaries. Instead, I let myself sink into his warmth, let his arm wrap around me, let myself feel safe for the first time in years. Tell me this isn't crazy, I whispered. This is completely crazy. His lips brushed my hair, but sometimes crazy is exactly what we need. We sat like that for hours, not talking, just existing together. At some point, I fell asleep against his chest, lulled by the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. When I woke, dawn was creeping through the windows, and Alessandro was still there, watching me with those dark, unreadable eyes. I should go, he said quietly. But I'll be back tonight. We need to talk about what comes next. What does come next? He stood, pulling on his jacket, all sharp edges and controlled power again. At the door, he turned back. Next, Emma Morrison, you stop being my employee and start being something much more complicated. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the scent of bergamot and the terrifying realization that I didn't want to be alone anymore. 3 weeks passed in a blur of contradictions. By day, I was Alessandro's assistant, managing his calendar, screening calls, accompanying him to meetings where men in expensive suits discussed things in coded language I was learning to interpret. I was good at it, surprisingly. The work was demanding, but never boring, and Alessandro trusted me with more responsibility each day. By night, I was something else entirely. He came to my apartment every evening, always after dark, always with Marco stationed discreetly in the hallway. We'd have dinner, sometimes takeout, sometimes meals he'd had delivered from restaurants I couldn't afford, and we'd talk about everything. My childhood, his past, the books I loved, the city he'd built his empire in. He never touched me beyond casual gestures, never pushed for more than I was ready to give. But the tension between us grew with every passing day, thick and electric, a storm waiting to break. David had disappeared from my life completely. Whatever Alessandro had done, whatever message had been delivered, it had worked. My ex-husband had dropped his complaint with the landlord, stopped calling, vanished as thoroughly as if he'd never existed. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt owned, claimed. And the most disturbing part was how much I liked it. "You're distracted," Sophia observed one afternoon as we reviewed Alessandro's schedule for the following week. "Is everything all right?" "Fine." I tried to focus on the calendar, but my mind kept wandering, just adjusting. To the job or to him. When I looked up sharply, Sophia smiled. "Emma, I'm not blind. Neither is anyone else who works for Mr. Marchese. The way he looks at you, the way he rearranges his entire schedule to have dinner with you every night. This isn't normal behavior for him. You're not just anything." Sophia closed her laptop, giving me her full attention. "Look, I care about you, and I respect you enough to be honest. Alessandro is falling for you, hard. Maybe he already has. And when a man like him falls, it's not gentle or casual. It's all-consuming, possessive, absolute." My heart hammered against my ribs. "He hasn't said anything, because he's waiting for you to catch up, to realize you feel the same way." Sophia's expression softened. "Do you feel the same way? Did I?" I thought about Alessandro's hands cradling my face after the gala incident, the way he'd held me while I slept, keeping watch over me like I was something precious, how his eyes tracked my every movement when we were in the same room, like he couldn't bear to look away, how safe I felt in his presence, despite, or maybe because of, the danger he represented. "I don't know," I whispered. "I don't know if what I'm feeling is real or just gratitude. Stockholm Syndrome. Something broken in me responding to someone strong. Or maybe," Sophia said gently, "it's just love. Complicated, messy, inconvenient love." Before I could respond, Alessandro's office door opened. He stood in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking tired in a way I rarely saw. "Emma, can I see you?" Sophia gathered her things quickly, shooting me an encouraging look as she left. I walked into Alessandro's office, and he closed the door behind me, something he never did during work hours. "What's wrong?" I asked immediately. He moved to the windows, staring out at the city. "Francesco Rossi wants to meet tomorrow. He's heard about you, about us. He wants to see for himself if the rumors are true." Ice slid down my spine. "What rumors?" "That I've gone soft. That I'm distracted by a woman, that I'm vulnerable." He turned to face me, and his expression was raw, in a way I'd never seen. "They're not entirely wrong. Alessandro..." "Let me finish." He crossed to me, taking my hands in his. "Francesco will try to use you against me. That's what men like him do. They find what you care about and they threaten it. I need to know if you're ready for that, if you're ready for what it means to be with someone like me. Really with me. Not just as an employee who I happen to care about." My mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm done pretending this is just professional. I'm done keeping my distance and waiting for you to adjust. I'm done fighting what I've known since the moment you landed in my lap. That you're mine, Emma. Completely. And I'm yours." His hands tightened on mine. "I'm saying I love you, and I need to know if you can love me back. Knowing what I am, what I do, the life you'd be choosing." The world tilted. "You love me?" "Dio, yes. I've been in love with you since you looked at me with those terrified eyes and stayed anyway. Since you signed that contract, even though every instinct probably told you to run. Since you stood up to your ex-husband in front of hundreds of people and refused to let him make you small. He pulled me closer, until we were breathing the same air. I love everything about you, Emma Morrison. Your strength, your vulnerability, the way you see through my bullshit, the way you're not afraid to call me out. I love you so much it terrifies me." Tears burned my eyes. "I'm scared." "I know. So am I." His thumb wiped away a tear that escaped. "But I'm more scared of losing you, of watching you walk away because you think you don't belong in my world. You do belong, Emma. Right here. With me. Your world is dangerous, and I'll spend every day for the rest of my life keeping you safe in it. His forehead pressed against mine. Say yes, Tesoro. Say you'll stop fighting this. Say you'll be mine, not just in name but in truth. I thought about the past 3 weeks. How alive I'd felt. How seen. How valued. How Alessandro had given me back pieces of myself I'd thought David had destroyed forever. How he looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. I love you, I whispered, the words breaking free like prisoners escaping. I think I've loved you since you told me to stay, since you protected me without asking for anything in return. I love you and it terrifies me, and I have no idea how to do this, but he kissed me. Finally, after weeks of tension and restraint, his mouth claimed mine with a hunger that made my knees buckle. I grabbed his shoulders for support, and he wrapped his arms around me, lifting me slightly, kissing me like I was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were almost black with intensity. You're mine now, he said roughly. Completely. Do you understand what that means? Tell me. It means I'll kill anyone who tries to hurt you. It means you'll never be invisible again, never be small, never be afraid. It means you're the most important thing in my world, and I'll burn it all down before I let anyone touch you. His hands framed my face. It means you're stuck with me, Emma, for as long as you'll have me, forever then. The word escaped before I could stop it, but I didn't take it back. His smile was devastating. Forever. The next evening, we drove to the Rossi estate together. I wore a dress Alessandro had chosen, deep emerald, that made me look powerful rather than pretty. The sapphire necklace glittered at my throat, but Alessandro had added something new, a ring on my right hand, emerald and diamonds, that marked me as his in ways anyone in his world would recognize. Stay close to me, he murmured as we walked to the door. Don't let Francesco intimidate you. He'll try. It's what he does. But remember, you're under my protection. Nothing will happen to you. Marco and 3 other guards flanked us. This wasn't a social visit. This was a show of force. Francesco Rossi met us in a study that reeked of old money and older power. He was in his 50s, handsome in a cruel way, with Isabella standing beside him like an ornament. Alessandro. Francesco's smile didn't reach his eyes. And this must be the famous Emma Morrison. Emma, Alessandro corrected coldly. Just Emma, and she's not famous. She's mine. How possessive. Francesco's eyes raked over me, assessing. She's lovely. I can see why you're distracted. I'm not distracted. I'm focused. There's a difference. Is there? Francesco moved closer, circling me like a predator. I felt Alessandro tense, ready to intervene. Tell me, Emma, what do you see in a man like Alessandro? The money? The power? Or are you simply drawn to danger? I met his gaze steadily. I see a man who keeps his promises, who protects the people he cares about, who's never once made me feel small or afraid. I paused. Can you say the same? Isabella's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe approval. Francesco's eyes hardened. Careful, girl. You're in my house. And she's under my protection. Alessandro stepped between us, his voice dropping to that deadly calm register. Francesco, let's stop dancing around this. You wanted to see if the rumors were true, if I'm compromised. Here's your answer. I'm exactly as dangerous as I've always been, more so, now that I have something to protect. You want to test that? Go ahead. But understand that if you threaten her, even obliquely, there's nowhere you can hide that I won't find you. The room crackled with tension. Francesco's guards shifted nervously. Marco's hand moved inside his jacket. Then Francesco laughed. A genuine sound of surprise. Dio, you really do love her. He shook his head. I thought Isabella was exaggerating, but you're actually willing to go to war over this woman without hesitation. Then we have no problem. Francesco extended his hand. I came here to see if you'd gone soft. But a man willing to burn the world for what he loves? That's not soft, Alessandro. That's the most dangerous kind of man there is. Alessandro shook his hand, but I could feel his skepticism. This felt too easy. As we were leaving, Isabella caught my arm. A word of advice, she said quietly. Men like our husbands, they love with the same intensity they kill. It's all-consuming, beautiful and terrifying. Don't try to change him, Emma, and don't ever give him reason to doubt your loyalty. In our world, betrayal is the only unforgivable sin. I would never betray him. Then you'll be fine. Isabella smiled. Welcome to the family, such as it is. 6 months later, I stood in Alessandro's penthouse, our penthouse now, watching the sunset over the city. So much had changed. I'd left the apartment he'd given me and moved into his space, our lives intertwining completely. I'd learned the rhythms of his world, the unspoken rules, the careful balance between legitimate business and shadow operations. I'd also learned what it meant to be loved by Alessandro Marchesi. He was possessive to a fault, protective to the point of obsession. He knew where I was at all times, had guards on me whenever he couldn't be there personally, checked in constantly throughout the day. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like finally being seen, finally being valued, finally being someone's priority. Arms wrapped around me from behind, and I leaned back against Alessandro's chest, breathing in that familiar scent of bergamot and danger. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against my neck. "How crazy my life has become." Regrets? Not a single one. I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd become my entire world. "I love you. I love you more." His hands cupped my face, tilting it up for a kiss that still made my toes curl. "Emma Morrison, you're the best thing that ever fell into my lap." I laughed. Literally. Literally. His expression sobered. "I need to tell you something. David made contact. Tried to apologize. Said he wanted to talk to you." My stomach clenched. "What did you do?" I reminded him why that was a terrible idea. "He won't contact you again." Alessandro's eyes searched mine. "But I want you to know. I'll always protect you from him, from anyone. You'll never have to be afraid again, I know." And I did, because Alessandro Marchesi kept his promises. Always. That night, we lay in bed, tangled together, and I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Invisible, exhausted, running from a man who'd broken her spirit. That woman felt like a stranger now. Alessandro had given me back my strength, my voice, my sense of self-worth. He'd shown me what it meant to be loved without conditions, protected without being diminished, claimed without being owned. Was it conventional? No. Was it dangerous? Absolutely. But it was ours. "What are you thinking?" Alessandro murmured in the darkness, his hand tracing lazy patterns on my spine. That I sat on the Mafia boss's lap to avoid my ex-husband, and he whispered he'd protect me. And he kept that promise. I'll always keep that promise. He pulled me closer. "You're mine, Emma, and I protect what's mine. Forever." "Forever," I echoed, pressing my lips to his chest, right over his heart. Outside, the city glittered with lights and possibilities. Somewhere in it, David Chen was living his small, bitter life, alone and afraid. Francesco Rossi was plotting his next move, testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses. Sofia was probably still working, managing Alessandro's empire with quiet efficiency. Marco stood guard outside our door, a silent sentinel. But in this moment, in this room, there was only Alessandro and me. Two broken people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, who'd chosen danger over safety, passion over security, love over fear. I'd fallen into a Mafia boss's lap by accident, but I'd stayed on purpose, and that made all the difference. 3 months later, Alessandro placed a different ring on my finger, this one on my left hand, diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. We married in a small ceremony with only his most trusted people present. Sofia cried. Marco smiled. Even Francesco Rossi sent his regards. David Chen saw the announcement in the society pages. He was living in a different state now, working a job far beneath his qualifications, jumping at shadows. He never contacted me again. I'd been Emma Morrison, invisible, broken, running. Now I was Emma Marchesi, seen, protected, loved. And I'd never been happier. Alessandro proved every day that danger and devotion could coexist. That possessiveness could feel like safety. That being claimed by the right person felt less like imprisonment and more like coming home. He'd promised to protect me that first night. He'd done more than that. He'd given me back myself, and I loved him for it, fiercely, Completely. Forever.